So, hey guys, I'm Jack. So, like I said, I'm a first-time speaker. So, you see again, just mistakes. It's gonna be nothing but mistakes up here. Okay, so I'm Jack, and since we've got a small audience today, I'd like to try to be a little more interactive. And the whole point of my talk is how I took some good advice and I kind of focused in on my high impact vulnerabilities and was able to become a lot more results driven. You know, I came into a brand new environment, into a role that I've never done before, and, you know, I was chasing after stuff and I wasn't really getting the results I was looking for. So, a little bit about my background. Don't know which buttons to hit now. So, I'm a Chief Information Security Officer for a large manufacturing company in Cleveland, Ohio. The thoughts and ideas presented in today's presentation are my own and don't represent my company. I've been doing InfoSec for 15, 20 years. I got started probably similar like a lot of you guys. Came up through help desk, server administration, network administration. I really dove into networking in college, got into Cisco. I still actually teach the Cisco Academy. And look at that. I'm even talking to the wrong slide. Look at that. You see? First time jitters, making all kinds of mistakes. Oh, sorry, Dave. So, let's talk about the problem statement. The situation that I had was I was working hard, but I wasn't getting a lot done. I spent a whole year putting in solutions, just, working my butt off, and I keep failing pen tests. My environment, it just wasn't getting much more secure. I was getting stuff done, but I really wasn't getting the results I wanted. My management was happy, but, I just kind of knew, I'm like, it shouldn't be this easy for the pen testers to get in. So the first possibility I thought of was, well, it's not my fault. I don't have enough resources. I don't have enough budget. I don't have enough control over the data I have. That's got to be the problem. It's not me. And then, a little voice in the back of your head's like, well, maybe it is you. Maybe you're not good enough. Maybe you're not focusing on the right things. You're trying to do too much. Maybe you need to ask for help. So that's kind of where I reached out to Dave Kennedy. And I asked Dave, I'm like, hey, I've been doing all these things. You guys are still getting in really easy. I'm not getting the results I'm looking for. What can I do? And he looked at me and he's like, so are you setting your goals? Or is your boss setting your goals? Are you chasing after what your boss thinks is important? Or are you going after what you know is important? I'm like, well, a little bit of both. I'm trying to make my boss happy. And he's like, you're going after BYOD, the cloud, you're going after big data. Is that really where your problems are? Those are big problems. And so he's like, you gotta take a step back. Try to simplify it, break it down, and focus on the basics. And then he also gave me another piece of advice. He said, read, rework. So, I took Dave's advice, went out, got rework, starting to flip through it, and I'm like, well, this book has nothing to do with information security. It's a book on how to start a startup company. What is it? What's Dave talking about? I'm like, all right, well, it's Dave. Trust it. I'm going to read the book. Flipping through it, and I started to see the parallels. All the challenges that you've got when you're building a startup company. You're trying to get stuff done as quickly as possible with as little resources as you have, and you're trying to show results quickly and continuously. And you can start kind of bringing those ideas on how to make a successful startup into your security program. And so that's what I started doing. I started looking for where are the core of my problems. What's kind of the epicenter? What's not going to change? Can I focus on less things? I had big strategy. I had long-term goals. Well, in this book, they were like, do short goals. Do smaller strategy, more accomplishable things. So I started looking at, like back to what Dave was saying was I really going after the core problems. So I'm trying to find the epicenter of the challenges I had. And, you read all the magazines, you see what people have got out there. They're talking about APT, the cloud, mobile malware. And it turns out that, that's just the hype. You look at the Verizon data breach report, that's considered high difficulty stuff. Like 10% of incidences are from that. And I went back and I looked at our own tickets. I'm looking at our own service desk. I'm seeing, where are we having our incidents? Sure, we lose a mobile device. We have a few of those situations, and we need to make sure that these are in our long-term strategy. But focusing on them is not getting me the short-term wins I'm looking for. You look at the low difficulty items. That's where all the tickets were. That's where all the time-consuming items were happening. That's where we were spending our time. Malware, phishing, patching. So that goes back to what Dave said. Get back to the basics. Get back to the simple stuff. So I went to another presentation given by Chris Clymer at the Cleveland Information Security Summit. And he's a consultant. He goes into all kinds of shops. And the presentation was really good. It talked about the similarities of programs that were successful and the programs that weren't successful. And he found 4 things that really kind of, caught my attention. The first one made sense. Good vulnerability assessment. But not just, hey, we ran the scanner and I got, here's the printout. Every finding has an action item. What are you going to do? And then the second piece was project management. And I'm like, project management? That's a successful keystone of a security program? And I was like, well, I'm good at project management. My resume says so. And, I asked Chris about it. And he's like, well, no, are you putting down the rigor? Are you putting together a clear problem statement? Do you have a work breakdown structure? Do you have resources? As you find the problems, you have the action plan. Do you have the mechanism in your organization to really drive it there? And then, are you reporting clearly so everybody can see, are you getting it done or are you not getting it done? And then responsibility. You've got to get the responsibility out of just security. If you're the only change agent in your organization for security, it's really hard to be effective. So, Chris saw in the companies that were good at security, didn't matter how much budget they had or how many resources they had, if they had good regular assessments with action items, followed up by robust project management, reporting at all levels, and then getting security goals put into everybody's goals and objectives. So the server team, the desktop team, the network team, they're all, kind of obligated to go after this. Now you've got more change agents to make this possible. So armed with the advice I got from Dave, what I learned from rework, and then also kind of getting an idea of what does good look like? What does a successful security program look like? I took 4 steps to try to help me get focused. The first thing I did was I went through all of our tickets. I started talking to everybody. What are you working on? And I tried to identify real actionable items. Where are we spending our time? Where do we have our high impact vulnerabilities? I know it's kind of a buzzword, but it is true. We've got those out there. And then once we've identified them, can we get a metric for it? And then can we build a project plan around it? A really good project plan. And then can we have a balanced scorecard so we can communicate to all levels of the business, how are we doing? In a way that they understand. And then you communicate it and then you report that scored out to everybody. So these were the steps I followed. And the first step, I went into the data. And metrics are hard. I bought a book on metrics. I started talking to people on metrics. There's so much data. And it's hard to find metrics that you can do easily and repeatable every month without having to spend a lot of time into it. And you also want to make sure it goes back to an actionable thing. So I focused on some really easy ones. Malware, phishing, and patching. We already had mechanisms in place to where this data was being gathered and reported. And then we started doing root cause analysis. We just started doing cause mapping on, well, why were we getting infected? What was causing the re-imaging? Did the AV not detect it? Was it web-based infection, Java infection, missing patch, security baseline? Well, this started to feed into what my actionable items were. So now I found the data, cause mapped to what I can clearly work on, and it's like, Java, that's a big problem. Patches, I'm not doing as good as I could be. Minimum security baselines. they're out there, they're published, but I don't have them on all my machines. And I did the same thing with phishing and patching. And, phishing really was the awareness program, and we've had some great success with that. So now that we found our metrics, we found the actionable items, I started to really dig into project management. I started writing, really good, problem statements, defining the scope, defining all the work breakdown structure. And not only did this give me a good path and a map to get to where I wanted to go, so when the operational noise, the day-to-day stuff, started distracting me away from what I really needed to get on, it was there. And I can go back to it. I'm like, well, no, actually on this date, we were supposed to be doing this. So, I need to be doing this, and I'm going to let that noise go. And also, when you've got to meet with other executives, and you're like, oh, hey, come and tell this other division what security's doing, you can kind of put up a little slide. Oh, here are our projects, here are our charters, and it's all neat and tidy, and they understand it, and it's in a format that, they can relate to. This helped a lot. Then, communication. You've got to the awareness program. This was something where I was just doing good security awareness because, it's required, it's what we're doing. And when I first got there, I made some policy changes, and my phone rang off the hook. Users were so upset. They're like, you changed this. And then I made a second change. I'm in my desk, and I'm waiting, and the phone didn't ring. I'm like, well, why aren't they calling? What's going on? And so I actually went out and I asked some people, I'm like, so what do you think of that policy change? Everything's okay? And they're like, well, yeah, but last week you did that security awareness conference, and you sent out some emails, and you kind of told us what was going on. So when we saw this change policy come out, we kind of expected it. I was like, oh, so you're okay with the change because I made the change after I did the training? Okay. So that's where I really started ramping up the awareness efforts. Started getting not just security awareness to help users be safe at home and at work, but to kind of get them to understand, why do I want a 10-character password now? Why do I have to use two-factor? Why, you're making my job harder, but if they understand it before you put that change in place. And then also you want to look at training up too. Can you make sure your executives understand the liabilities, insider threat, kind of the higher level stuff. And through awareness and communication, it was like, instead of having to push the program forward, the user community started drawing it forward. I stopped getting so many complaints. Reporting. This is where you got to think like a CFO. The reports that, we generate are sometimes terrible. And if you're not in our industry, they're hard to read. And you want to think about it like the financials. When other business units report up how they're doing, they report it in a P&L form. They show quarter results, and then they show where you were last time that year at the same time. And you can go down the line, you can see, are the numbers going in the right direction or the wrong direction? And if you see a number going in the wrong direction, there's a call out that says what happened, and then what's your action plan to remediate that number. So that way, they might not fully understand all the details of the project, but at one page, they can see, are we trending in the right way? And if we're not, what are the action items that we can do? Because your executive team, they can remove your roadblocks. They can help you overcome your challenges. Current state. So this is the part that I'm really excited to talk about. So by kind of taking a step backwards, focusing on my high-impact vulnerabilities and becoming more results-driven, these are some of the things I was able to get done. So I got the Think Before You Click awareness program going. We have 3,200 users taking monthly security awareness training. They log in, they take 8 minutes worth of web-based training, and we report on that. If they don't get it done in 30 days, they get an email from the president saying, hey, why didn't this get done? We do 4 on-site training events a year. So all the different locations will go to, in the cafeteria, they get to go through all the training. We do it both from home and at work. We're communicating this out, and we're also showing our user base where we're moving with the program, what we're doing. We've got all this stuff posted. We were able to encrypt our workstations and our mobile devices. We were able to move our patching policy to 15 days. This was something that was really challenging, but by making security part of everybody's responsibility and getting all the different teams buy-in, we set a high goal of 15 days. And it's okay to set a goal that you can't achieve day one. We missed this metric for the first few months. But when you've got a published metric that's read 3 or 4 months in a row, and you've got action items with people's names next to it, they start to get focused in on, I want that to turn green. I want my name off of that. So we were able to kind of get to there. Full egress filtering. We turned off port 80 and 443. Just told it couldn't be done. Oh, everything will break. Well, when we focused in on just that problem, and we got everyone looking at it, and we just kind of took off the board, we're going to go this way. We looked at what we could do. We made the bypass rules that needed to be made, and we turned it off. Minimum security baselines. We've got that rolled out to most of our devices now. And this is the big one, Java. And this is kind of something that came out of this that I hope that more people could replicate. So removing Java from the environment. I believe what John Strand said, if you can't, the business runs on Java. Saying you're just going to remove it, it's not realistic. But can you move the problem? So with Microsoft App V, you can virtualize Java, and you can put a second icon on the desktop called Java Browser. And now you can remove Java from their local machine, and it's running in a virtual instance. Well, that solved one problem. That solved Java 7. But you still have legacy apps that need Java 6. Well, you can virtualize that too. Put another icon on the desktop for that application. And then you still got some users who they have to run an application that needs Java. And unfortunately, we found in our organization that IT was one of the biggest offenders. You can't run our SAN without Java. But you don't have to have Java bound to the browser. You can have Java there, but for their main browser icon, you can unbind it. So now, when they're going out to the web, they don't have Java enabled. Our infection rate went way down. Our re-imaging went way down. Now, it wasn't just removing Java, but it was also shutting down all the egress ports. I mean, there was all of these things kind of fed into this. And the security awareness program. We now send out, our own phishing messages. We're trying to, get people to understand what they can click on, how to report it. And we don't measure how many people click the link. We measure how fast we were able to go from, we hit go on the phishing to where people started reporting into the service desk, it got blocked at the spam filter, and it got blocked at the web filter, and basically the threat was neutralized. We measure how fast we can close that gap because we're trying to build an army of human sensors. Our user base will be able to find these problems and report them better than any appliance I can buy. So we're trying to arm them and move that forward. And then passwords. This was a really good example of when the security and the business can kind of come together and maybe get a better result than individually. I'm trying to make the hardest passwords possible. Business wants the easiest passwords possible. And we came together at a nice compromise. I'm like, how about you give me 10 characters and I'll give you password self-service reset. And when the user goes to change their password, a little box pops up that tells them the instructions on how to create a good password. So now I've got 10 characters, and our ticket volumes went down on password resets in the service desk. So the users are happier. Yep, they got to make a harder password, but if they screw it up or they lock out their account, they can now fix it themselves. They don't got to call anybody. So we were able to kind of, move that forward. So these were some of my experiences. And what I'm working on next is protect the king. I'm trying to, now that I've focused on some of my basics, I've got some of the core things taken care of. Now I want to drill down and focus in on, how I'm protecting my intellectual property and the data that has the most value. So if I'm lucky enough to get invited back to DerbyCon next year, I'll talk to you guys about that. And with that, I know I left a ton of time for questions, and also I want to put out another special thanks to Dave Kennedy for helping me get back to basics and become more results-driven. Um, I'd really like to open the floor up for some questions, and I kind of sped through the talk a little bit faster than I was hoping to, but with such a small audience here today, I'd like to try to get some interaction. And I'm going to say, hey, my security program is not as good as it could be. And I want to make my program better. And I'm hoping that today I shared some of the challenges that I had and some of the things that I did to resolve it. And what I'd like to do is kind of turn it over to you guys and see if anybody in the audience would like to share a problem that they've had and a solution that they are trying to implement or have had success with. Because these conferences, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did without the community feedback. And I was hoping to kind of use the time right now to see if you guys would like to share your experiences. Yes, sir? Okay. So the question was, how the hell did you get rid of Java? So by not trying to be the only security guy, by really getting the other members of IT engaged in security, getting them to think about how are we going to make this better. It happened over a lunch conversation. Went out to lunch with the desktop manager. He's telling me about AppV and how he's virtualizing some applications. And so we started talking about AppV, Microsoft AppV, and how it was able to work and how it created another virtual container on the server. And, I kind of mentioned to him, well, we've got, legacy Java out there. We virtualize Java. You virtualize that old application. He's like, well, yeah, I think we could do that. So he worked on it for a few days, and what he was able to do is through Microsoft AppV, you can actually run Java on an instance on a server. And then you put like a shortcut icon, you advertise it out to the user's desktop. So they're running Internet Explorer, they're launching IEXE from their local machine, so it launches fast. But when it loads the Java extension, it's actually loading it from the AppV container off the server. So now, when they're using that browser, they're running in that Java virtual machine running off the server. When they close that browser, it shuts down that session. It's done. And we've brought in a pen testing team. We actually tested this out. We tried some exploits on it, and they weren't able to get access to the local machine. In fact, we were also worried, well, now are you going to get access to the server? Because it was in that little virtual container, it couldn't get out of the session because it's not really attached to anything. The user doesn't have like a full, login session on the server. It's just running in that little instance. So that's how we were able to do it. Now, the other part of that, so that's the technical, right? The nuts and bolts. But at least in my case, I've found the nuts and bolts are the easiest part of my job. It's the people, right? You go and you tell someone you're going to change something. Oh, they don't like change. So we did it really small. We made small little incremental steps. The first thing we did was we just popped out a second icon. Sent out an email, hey, there's this new icon. It's called the Java browser. If you go to a website, like a bank website that needs it, use this. Give it a try. And then, we had some legacy apps, and we put another icon out there for the old Java 6. Well, it didn't just say, Java 6. It actually said, Chronos time clock. Well, the users, they found that to even be easier. They're like, oh, so I don't have to go to the browser and then go to my favorites. I just click on this one icon, and it takes me to where I need to go. And, they don't know that Java 6 is being loaded in the background. So we let that sit out there. They started using it. They started getting comfortable with it. And then we started slowly removing Java from their workstations. And they didn't notice. And it was good, and we did it slowly in a piloting phase. Yeah? Okay, great question. So from the web-based GUI experience, you won't even notice a difference. And you're really launching your local version of Internet Explorer, so it still loads up pretty fast. And then it's just loading that Java extension in through the virtual machine. So all of the Java that's presented on the screen in the normal web interface looks exactly the same. Now, if you've got a more robust tool, like an ASDM or like some kind of network administration tool or utility, and it actually you're launching the application, and that's a Java-based application that gives you like a more rich GUI interaction with the appliance. We still load Java locally. Because you're right, there's some times where for a really good, robust environment, you're not launching it through a browser, or maybe it's using a browser, but it's got so much preloaded, like client-based code. We still left Java on the workstation. That's why I'm only at 85%. But just because you've got Java loaded locally on the machine, for their main browser, you can unbound Java. So that way they can click on their application, load it up, and they get that great experience, but their normal browsing every day, Java's unbounded from that. They only have to go to the Java icon when they go to a website that needs it. So that's how we did the balance. So we still left Java where they needed it. GPO. So we wrote a GPO, we pushed it out with SCCM, and then for the initial rollout, for our initial test, because like I said, we moved pretty slowly, we set a goal to remove Java manually on 50 workstations a week for a whole month. So we actually had a technician going out and removing Java, explaining to the user what was happening, and we picked the users that we know hit the bank websites, hit the technical websites, the engineers, the guys that we know kind of used it, and they were there and did it manually. Then once we had a better comfort level, we scripted it with a GPO setting through SCCM. Yes, we only support IE. And that was another big challenge too, and where it goes back to you've got to get all of IT kind of invested in security. Because you alone as a change agent you don't have enough impact. When you get other folks thinking about security and they start making small little decisions in their day, the desktop team came to me and said, you know what, it'd be better if we just supported one browser. And you know what, we've got this software and only like less than 1% of the company uses it and they really need it. How about we just take it off the list? And they started curving back their own approved applications. One, it made it support easier for them, but we got a great security benefit from it as well. Yes, sir. Oh, so we've got 3,200 endpoints in 22 locations in 6 countries, and we've got about 350 servers. So that's kind of the scope and scale. We're a VMware shop. VMware. Yeah. Yes, we used AppV because because we use VMware in the server environment, and then we use we're all Microsoft on the endpoints. So we're already SCCM, we're already kind of moving in that direction. So AppV, and it was also free because AppV is included with Windows 7 license, with the enterprise license. So it was a solution we didn't have to pay for. We have a lot of compliance regulations. Yeah. So we have a lot of regulatory compliance. Yeah. So any other experiences people would like to share? Yeah. Yes, sir. No, because there's it's kind of immediate feedback. go to Bank of America's website and it's like, no, this doesn't work without Java. And they're like, oh, okay, I got to click on the icon. And I thought I'd get more complaints. And we didn't. People were just like, okay, I'll click on that icon. And a lot of people, after they've done it once or twice, they kind of know. They're like, okay, you know what, I do my daily web surfing here, and then when I go out to this website, I use that icon. And the user community picked it up well, and that's where it goes back to that communication and awareness training. They had an understanding. They knew the risks. We kind of showed it to them, and they could kind of understand that and how it impacted them at home and at work. And we've actually encouraged people to remove Java at home, because this started about 2 years ago. I put out what I called my Java challenge, and I challenged everybody to remove Java from their machine. And it kind of grew from that. I mean, I've had a personal vendetta against Java, I guess, for like the last 2 years. Yes, sir. Yeah. Okay, so his question, I think, hits on a big point of why I wasn't moving forward as fast as I wanted to. It's hard to find. Well, no, it's too easy to find things to work on. It's hard to focus on the things that give you the best results. There's so much day-to-day noise, and if your environment's like mine, I have plenty of things to work on. And you're right. I mean, I focus down on a few items, right? Where you're looking at but when I took a step back and I looked at, I really cherry picked metrics, time, fast, is what the actual item was going after, right? And then I knew how I was going to solve that root cause. I was everybody looking at that metric, everybody moving that way. So it's really kind of figure that out, and then you kind of make sure your dashboard is more part of the formula goes where your business brought you in, they trust you, they trust where you're taking it. And if you say, hey, we're going after patching, they're like, okay, we're here at the table, patching is what we do. And I don't know if I'm answering the question, because it's there's so much, and that's what when Dave kind of told me, he's like, doing too much. Focus on less to get more done, and then use your metrics to make sure you manage the products you're making, because then patching, you can show the trend line, but yet I know when I run the test and when I run the test, I don't have visual patches in my environment. Now I can not only say, hey, this has been our trend line, and this year we'll leave our trend line, this long we do it. And then I go to do that. For the Y terminal, I mean, you're not buying a laptop every 3 years. There's so many costs in there. Now, everybody's environment is different. I will get this back. One call, I was what was the problem? Meeting up on time. What was the problem? That's how and measure that out. Okay. Baseline for talent, right? So you've got a server that's maybe been in your environment for 3 or 4 years. It's running. It's kind of, it's patched. It's set up by a good administrator following good standards. But, there's a couple places where you can download your baselines. Microsoft actually has a tool where you can download the baseline, recommend for that system, and then you can go through all of the settings and kind of tweak it and then save off your new image. And it basically creates like a GPO policy that you apply all the security stuff to it. Microsoft has a tool that automates this and makes it a lot easier to kind of manage your baselines for the different servers and customize them. And you also want to make sure that you can have a bit of a test environment or be able to make like a snapshot of a server. This is really the first time you apply baselines, things that you had no idea will break. And there's also another place that you can get baselines from. It's CIS, the CIS minimum security baseline. CIS-based baselines are awesome. You can get access to most of them for free. If you don't pay for them, you get the PDF. And you've got to go through and click everything yourself. The Microsoft tool is completely free, and it automates that clicking process. Now, if you pay a couple grand, you can actually get their tool that automates it. But we use the Microsoft. Yeah. I had enough problems I knew about, and, you know, when you fail to pen test as well, I had fun hard. And I was doing a lot of work. I wasn't getting a lot of the results. And that's where there's still a bunch of my environment that I don't know about. But I'm focused on the stuff that I do know about, and I have a plan that I can work to, and I've got the resources and budget to make it build it. So I can still get caught by something out there that I don't know about, but at least I'm hoping I won't get popped by something I knew about. You know, because that's really bad. You know, when you get popped for a vulnerability that someone told you had in your environment 3 times and you never fixed it. That was really what I was trying to prevent. Is I didn't want to end up being that security officer who, you know, we got breached and it was like, oh yeah, I knew about that. I didn't get to that yet. You know, that's where I tried to focus in on those. So I hope that answers the question. Yeah. It's Java. It's Java. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're an Oracle shop. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not like, oh, we are Oracle, we are Java, we've got custom apps, we got apps that are older than I am. I mean, I get it. It's tough. I've been picking my battles, right? Well, small victories. Got local admin removed from like every normal user's workstation. Started removing them from engineers, getting up to like those developer people, and there's the applications that allow you to grant someone temporary admin rights. The cost of those are coming down. We bought an initial license pass because I mean everything's got to be balanced with the budget, right? So exactly, right? So for the guys that we kind of had the most problems with, I got licenses for them. I was able to control, you know, give them temporary admin rights to like run something. Now we still have to, you know, we trust them, basically. We give them their admin rights in their box. And we've also kind of now shifted it to where I didn't want someone log into your local workstation, surfing the web, with your little app. So I created what we call like a medium, right? So that user still has local apps. If they want something, they're going to have to, you know, shift right click, and it goes run as, and then they type in their ADM account, and it just so it's like I didn't take your rights away. I just go on the web, and they kind of find those compromises. you've got to build a relationship. You've got to spend more time kind of being their buddy and, understanding their point of view and their problem. Because, what was it? I got some great advice at ShmooCon one year. It was when I just got new to this job. And the guy was like, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And I really took that part because I was, I know what to do, and we're going to go do this. And slow down, build a relationship, understand your environment, understand the problems, and it's hard, and it takes more time to have them be part of the solution and change, because they'll more likely want to do it. If you just push the policy down, all right, guys, I'm out of time. I hope the talk was useful. Thanks. Schmooball! Yeah. Oh, great. Pleasure.
Are you a member of ISA?
I sure am a member of ISA.
Do you know about the CISA forum?